A millionaire throws one of the most exclusive parties of the year. Champagne flowing, gowns glittering, ego soaring. But among the high society crowd, one guest stands out. A black cleaning lady, still in her uniform, clutching an invitation that doesn't belong in her world. Whispers ripple through the room. Laughter bubbles beneath breath. She was invited as a joke, a cruel prank by a bored billionaire trying to be edgy. But what happens next stops the music. Instead of shrinking back, she holds her head high. With quiet dignity, she moves through the room, not to serve, but to be seen. Eyes widen, tongues fall silent. One by one, the crowd begins to shift. A toast turns into a reckoning. A joke turns into a mirror. And the woman everyone expected to mock becomes the unexpected center of gravity. By the end of the night, power dynamics crumble, masks slip, and lives change, especially hers. But not the way anyone predicted, because she didn't come to clean up their mess. She came to reveal it. James Hawthorne was the kind of man who owned the room before he even spoke. A self-made billionaire with a sharp jawline and an even sharper tongue, he thrived on attention. Every gesture, every smirk, every tailored suit was a calculated move in a game where power was the prize. His sprawling mansion perched atop the city's highest hill was a fortress of opulence, walls adorned with priceless art, floors gleaming with polished marble, and chandeliers dripping crystals like liquid diamonds. It was a world built to impress, intimidate, and control. His friends were no less extravagant. Wealthy heirs, famous celebrities, and high-powered executives who orbited around him like satellites, eager for his approval and biting his jokes. The air buzzed with whispered gossip, backhanded compliments, and clinking glasses filled with the finest champagne money could buy. Here, status was currency, and James was the ultimate dealer. But beneath the glittering surface was a man whose sense of humor veered dangerously close to cruelty. Sarcasm was his weapon, wielded with precision to remind everyone just how far above them he stood. His laughs were sharp and sudden, cutting through conversations like a knife. He delighted in pushing boundaries, testing loyalties, and mocking weaknesses, all while wearing a grin that made it clear he believed he was untouchable. James saw life as a stage where he played the lead role, and everyone else was just part of the scenery. His parties weren't just social events. They were carefully choreographed displays of dominance. Invitations were selective weapons, extended only to those who could boost his ego or provide entertainment. And sometimes, just for fun, he tossed in an unexpected guest, someone out of place, a live joke to amuse his elite circle. In James's word, control was everything, and tonight he planned to remind everyone why he was king by inviting someone who should never have crossed the velvet rope. But even kings can be dethroned in the most unexpected ways. Maria's world was a quiet contrast to James Hawthorne's loud one. She moved through the grand estates and high-rise offices with practiced ease, a cleaning lady by trade but so much more beneath the surface. Her hands were rough from years of scrubbing floors and wiping away the messes left behind by careless wealth. She wore simple clothes, a faded uniform that never quite fit right, and her hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. To most, she was invisible, a background character in the stories of luxury she cleaned. Her days started before dawn with the soft hum of an old radio and the smell of strong coffee. She worked tirelessly, folding linens with care, polishing silver until it gleamed, and tidying spaces that sparkled but never truly belonged to her. Her work was humble, but she took pride in it, believing that dignity could be found in any honest labor. Maria's life was built on quiet resilience. She never complained, never demanded more than she was given, but beneath her calm exterior was a reservoir of strength. Life hadn't been easy. There were nights she lay awake thinking of a door slammed in her face, of dreams deferred, and of moments when she was made to feel less than. Pain like that could either break a person or build them up. Maria had chosen the latter. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that didn't come from privilege or power, but from surviving and rising above. Her eyes told stories she rarely shared, of loss, of hard choices, and of a fierce hope that one day things would be different. In her heart, Maria held onto a dignity that no uniform, no dismissive glance could take away. She believed in kindness, in hard work, and in the possibility that the world might be kinder someday. When she received the invitation to James Hawthorne's party, it felt like a mistake, a cruel joke from the very world that had always overlooked her. But Maria was no stranger to surprises, and she knew this night would be unlike any other. Whatever happened next, she would meet it with the same quiet strength that had carried her this far. It started as just another of James Hawthorne's twisted games, a prank designed to amuse his circle of wealthy friends. Over glasses of aged whiskey and laughter that echoed through his marble halls, James tossed out the idea with a sly grin. "Why don't we invite Maria? You know, the cleaning lady who's always lurking around here," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Imagine the look on everyone's faces when she shows up in the ratty uniform." His friends erupted into laughter, their amusement fueled by the cruel certainty that Maria wouldn't belong. "She'd be so out of place. She'd trip over her own shadow," one said. Another joked about how quickly she'd leave in embarrassment once she realized she'd been made the butt of the joke. The plan was simple: slip an invitation into her locker, watch her show up, and enjoy the spectacle as she faltered under the weight of their snickers and sneers. It was a perfect, petty way to entertain themselves, an elaborate joke at someone else's expense. But then something unexpected happened. Maria found the invitation. At first she thought it was a mistake, maybe someone playing a joke on her. But the embossed gold lettering and the carefully folded card told a different story. It was real. Her first instinct was to ignore it, to stay in the shadows, where she felt safe and unseen. But then a spark of something deeper stirred, a quiet challenge. What if she didn't let them dictate her word? What if she showed up not as their joke, but on her own terms? When she accepted, the room where James and his friends gathered later that week fell into a stunned silence. They had expected her to reject it, or worse, to be humiliated when she arrived. Instead, Maria was going to step into their world, uninvited in spirit but very much present in reality. The joke had just taken a turn none of them saw coming, and now the real story was about to begin. Maria held the invitation in her hands late into the night, the delicate card feeling heavier than it should. At first, she thought about ignoring it altogether. After all, she wasn't meant to be part of that world. But as the hours passed, a quiet flame kindled inside her. This was more than just an invite. It was an opportunity, a chance to rewrite the story they had all written for her without her consent. She made a decision. She wouldn't come as the cleaning lady they expected. She would come as a queen. The next morning, Maria reached out to Rosa, her longtime friend and neighbor. Rosa was the first person who believed in Maria's quiet strength, who saw the woman beneath the uniform. "You've got this, Maria," Rosa said, her eyes bright with encouragement. "You deserve to walk into that party knowing exactly who you are." Together, they scoured the thrift stores and boutiques, hunting for something that could capture Maria's spirit, something elegant but authentic. Clothes weren't the only change. It was about transforming how Maria saw herself. She practiced standing tall in the mirror, smoothing the creases from her borrowed dress and learning to hold her head high, even when doubt whispered that she didn't belong. The hardest part wasn't the dress or the shoes, it was the fear. Fear that she would be laughed at, ridiculed, or made to feel invisible again. The fear that no matter what she wore, she would always be the outsider. But alongside that fear grew determination. Maria reminded herself of every hard day she had endured, every moment she had chosen dignity over despair. She wasn't just dressing up, she was reclaiming her story. Then, by a stroke of luck or perhaps fate, Rosa connected Maria with a stylist named Claire, a woman who had worked with celebrities but found her true passion in helping people find their confidence. Claire saw something special in Maria from the moment they met. She carefully styled her hair and applied makeup that highlighted Maria's natural beauty rather than masking it. "You don't need to change who you are," Claire said softly. "You just need to see yourself the way we all do." As the night of the party approached, Maria's nerves and excitement tangled together in a knot she couldn't quite unravel. Yet beneath it all, a steady courage anchored her. She was ready to step into that world, not as a joke, but as a force no one expected. Because this transformation wasn't just about appearances, it was about breaking through invisible barriers, about standing tall when the world tries to push you down, and about the power of believing in yourself, even when no one else does. Maria was no longer just a cleaning lady. She was about to become the queen of the night. The grand chandelier cast a kaleidoscope of light across the marble floors, and the soft murmur of wealthy voices filled the air like a low tide. Crystal glasses clinked, laughter spilled in clusters, and the scent of expensive perfume hung thick in the room. James Hawthorne's mansion was a temple of luxury, a world where every detail screamed exclusivity, and every guest was handpicked to bolster his image. The party was in full swing when the unexpected happened. The doors swung open. Maria stepped inside. Gone was the worn uniform and the tired expression of the woman who spent her days scrubbing floors. Instead, she appeared in a stunning deep emerald gown that hooked her figure with effortless grace. The fabric shimmered under the lights, delicate embroidery tracing patterns like vines climbing up her neckline. Her hair was styled in soft waves that framed her face, and the subtle glow of makeup enhanced her natural beauty without masking it. She moved with a calm confidence that was impossible to ignore. Each step was measured, purposeful, a quiet command that rippled through the crowd. The low hum of conversations faltered, heads turned, eyes widened. At first the shock was sharp and sharp-edged. Some guests whispered cruel jokes under their breath, attempting to cloak their surprise in sarcasm. "Look at her. Thinks she belongs here," a man muttered with a snide smile. But as Maria's gaze swept across the room, steady and unflinching, something shifted. The laughter that had once been sneers began to falter. The mocking glances softened into something else. Awe, respect even. The power in her posture, the quiet dignity in her smile, dismantled their assumptions piece by piece. James himself watched from across the room, his smirk fading into something unreadable. He had expected a spectacle, a moment of humiliation. Instead, he saw a woman who didn't need his approval to own the night. Maria stopped briefly near the grand staircase, where the richest and most powerful gathered, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Her presence was magnetic, not because she was flaunting wealth or status, but because she was unapologetically herself. Her emerald dress caught the light like a jewel, but it was her poise that truly dazzled. She didn't rush or stumble, she didn't falter or shrink. She claimed her space with the grace of someone who had fought too hard to be invisible. And for the first time that evening, the party wasn't just about wealth or power, it was about courage. In that moment, the unthinkable happened. The joke became the revelation. Maria was no longer the cleaning lady who didn't belong. She was the queen who had arrived on her own terms, and no one could look away. The murmur of the crowd hushed as James Hawthorne stepped forward, his eyes narrowing with a mixture of disbelief and amusement. He crossed the room with the deliberate swagger of a man used to owning every moment. "Well, well, Maria," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "I must admit, I didn't expect you to actually show up. I was half hoping you'd see the invitation as a joke." Laughter rippled from his friends, low and cruel, as if waiting for her to stumble, to falter under the weight of their scorn. James smirked, clearly enjoying the moment, ready to deliver another biting comment. But Maria didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze steadily, her posture unwavering. "I did come," she said quietly, her voice calm but carrying a strength that demanded attention, "because I refuse to live by the limits other people set for me, especially when those limits come with sneers and insults." Her eyes swept the room, landing on the faces that had once dismissed her as invisible, now caught off guard by her quiet power. James raised an eyebrow, the first crack in his confident facade. "And what exactly do you think you're doing here? Pretending to be something you're not?" Maria's smile was gentle but firm. "I'm not pretending. I'm simply showing you what dignity looks like when it's earned through hard work, not inherited wealth." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You invited me as a joke, but the real joke is thinking that someone like me could be embarrassed by your cruelty. I've spent years cleaning up messes, both in homes and in life. Tonight I'm here to remind you that respect isn't given because of money or status. It's earned through courage." A ripple of unease passed through the room. The laughter had faded, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. For the first time that night, James and his friends were confronted not with the caricature they'd imagined, but with a real person, someone who carried her past pain and turned it into undeniable strength. One of James's friends, a woman who had been snickering moments before, found her voice. "You're different than we thought," she said quietly, almost admiringly. Maria nodded. "Because I am, and I'm done being invisible. I'm done being the punchline." Her gaze held theirs, unwavering. "Tonight isn't about a joke, it's about truth." James looked at her then, his eyes searching. For a moment the mask of arrogance slipped, revealing a flicker of something more, uncertainty, maybe even respect. The room shifted. The power dynamics that had seemed so fixed began to dissolve. People saw Maria not as a symbol of their amusement, but as a woman who refused to be diminished. Her grace, her words, her presence cracked the walls they had built around their privilege. And in that moment, the millionaire's joke was turned on its head, revealing not humiliation, but the quiet, fierce triumph of a woman who had always been more than they ever expected. As Maria stood there facing the stunned crowd, memories flickered behind her calm eyes, fragments of a past life hidden beneath years of hard labor and quiet endurance. She hadn't always been a cleaning lady. There was a time when Maria's hands held books instead of mops, when her mornings were spent in lecture halls rather than early shifts wiping floors. She had been a promising student, gifted in literature and languages, with dreams of becoming a teacher or a writer. Her mind was sharp, her spirit curious, a bright flame eager to light her way. But life's harsh turns had other plans. A family crisis pulled her away from school, forcing her to take whatever work she could find to support those she loved. Doors that once seemed open slammed shut, not because of lack of talent, but because of circumstance and the silent barriers society places between dreams and reality. Pride kept her going, even when the world told her she had no place among its elite. She survived loss and disappointment, the death of a parent, the end of a long-held relationship, the sting of rejection. Each blow could have crushed her, but instead it forged a resilience that was as much a part of her as her very breath. That resilience was her armor. Even now, as she polished the floors and tidied the mansions of the wealthy, Maria carried within her the strength of all she had endured. Her work was honest, her spirit unbroken. She refused to let anyone's judgment define her worth. And tonight, dressed not just in fine fabric, but in years of perseverance and dignity, she was more than a cleaning lady. She was a woman reclaiming her identity, a reminder that behind every uniform, every underestimated face, lies a story rich with hope, struggle, and unyielding power. The crowd, caught in her presence, glimpsed a truth they hadn't expected, that worth isn't measured by wealth or status, but by the courage to rise again and again. As Maria's words hung in the air, the atmosphere in the room began to shift, imperceptibly at first, then with growing momentum. The guests who had moments ago exchanged amused glances now found themselves looking at her with something new, respect. One by one, people approached her, their expressions sincere, tinged with regret. A woman in a shimmering silver gown reached out, her voice soft but earnest. "Maria, I'm sorry. We judged you unfairly. Thank you for reminding us what true strength looks like." Others nodded, inspired not just by her courage, but by the dignity she carried effortlessly. A few shared stories of their own struggles. Their own moments of feeling overlooked or underestimated, finding in Maria a reflection of their own humanity. Even the loudest critics seemed to soften. The room's focus subtly shifted away from the glitter and status symbols to the undeniable presence of the woman who refused to be invisible. And then there was James, the millionaire, who had orchestrated the cruel joke, now stood diminished, not because anyone spoke against him, but because beside Maria's quiet power, his arrogance seemed fragile and small. His smirk faded, replaced by a tight-lipped silence as he watched the respect she commanded without needing to demand it. For the first time that evening, the party wasn't about him. It was about Maria, the woman who came as a surprise and stayed as a force. The contrast was striking. James's world, built on control and mockery, crumbled quietly in the face of Maria's grace and unwavering strength. Guests no longer saw her as an outsider, but as a leader in their midst. The unspoken truth settled over the room. Respect is never a gift handed out lightly. It's earned through character, courage, and the refusal to be diminished. Tonight Maria had earned it all, and in doing so she had changed the story of the night, and perhaps the story of everyone there. The air in the room transformed, heavy with tension moments before, now charged with something electric and undeniable. Guests who had once whispered behind their hands now edged closer, drawn to Maria's quiet magnetism. The sparkle of jewels and designer labels dimmed in comparison to the light she carried from within. She wasn't commanding attention with money or status. No, this was different. It was a power born of authenticity, of soul laid bare with courage. Her laughter was genuine, her smile warm but steady, and her presence grounded the room like the calm after a storm. Clusters of people gathered around her, eager to hear her speak, to share stories, to connect on a level far deeper than any cocktail party could offer. The walls of exclusivity began to crumble, replaced by a pulse of shared humanity. Among the crowd stood a tall woman with sharp eyes and an air of quiet authority, Elena Martinez, a renowned philanthropist and CEO known for championing overlooked talent. Elena had watched the entire evening unfold, intrigued and moved by Maria's grace. Stepping forward, Elena extended her hand. "Maria, your strength and story deserve more than just tonight's applause. I'd like to offer you something, a platform, a partnership, a chance to share your voice on a larger stage. You have the power to inspire change far beyond these walls." Maria's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and cautious hope flickering within them. This was a door opening, one she hadn't dared to knock on before. The crowd's energy shifted again, now filled with possibility. The same people who had doubted and dismissed her were witnessing a transformation that transcended appearances and shattered expectations. James Hawthorne stood to the side, his expression unreadable, as the room rallied around a woman who had walked in as a joke but now stood as a beacon. Maria smiled softly, feeling the weight of the moment settle not as a burden, but as a call to rise, to lead, to change the narrative. Tonight was no longer just a party. It was a turning point. By morning, the story of the party had rippled far beyond the mansion's walls. Social media buzzed with photos of Maria, the woman who had walked into an elite gathering not as a joke, but as a queen. News outlets picked up the tale. The cleaning lady who defied expectations, challenged privilege, and rewrote her story with grace and strength. Maria's phone didn't stop ringing. Messages poured in from strangers, inspired by her courage, from old friends proud to see her recognized, and from new opportunities knocking, offers to speak, to collaborate, to lead. Her life was changing in ways she hadn't imagined, not just socially, but deeply personal. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a validation of all the years spent pushing through adversity. Meanwhile, James Hawthorne retreated behind closed doors. The backlash was subtle but palpable. Some former friends distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the embarrassment. Others questioned their own roles in the night's cruelty. For James, the laughter had died down, replaced by a quiet reckoning, a moment to reflect on what true power really meant. The mansion, once a stage for control and mockery, had become the backdrop for an unexpected transformation, and Maria, no longer invisible, was stepping into a future she'd earned. A future shaped by dignity, courage, and the refusal to be defined by anyone else's story. Never underestimate someone based on their job or appearance. True dignity, strength, and grace aren't bought. They're earned through courage, resilience, and self-belief. Maria's story reminds us that every person holds untold power within, waiting to be recognized and honored. If her journey inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate the strength of the human spirit. Together, let's uplift voices that deserve to be heard and rewrite the narratives that limit us all. Your support helps spread hope and courage. Thank you for being part of this journey.